Do you have any advice for the current and prospective board members? How do they prepare themselves for the future?
I think it kind of does go back to continual learning. The first thing is, if you're serving on a board, you need to take the time to understand that, that the company, how it works, what's the culture, what's the competitive environment. That's a really important one. Where are we competing? How do we stand up? So benchmarking is an important part of helping boards know with external confidence how the company stands. It's not uncommon for committees to have advisors, external independent advisors. In addition to, everyone has their accounting, their tax and accounting advisors, but there's also advisors for compensation, for M&A strategy, and things like that. So you have to establish relationships with all your board members so that you're working together, and just do your homework. Come prepared, and come to, our role is, like I said, duty and care, but we also want to add value. Mm-hmm. We want to show support for the leadership team, challenge them when it's appropriate, but certainly support the company, and don't just go with the flow. It's okay to, a lot of times in today's world we think, oh, don't say anything if you disagree. If everyone agrees, that's not a good thing. There has to be robust and healthy discussion. Mm-hmm. And in a good board of people who trust one another and a strong leadership team, that's a very rewarding experience.
Yeah. So then how about those industry executives and professionals? What advice would you give it to them in order to better working with the board?
Just like anytime you're making a presentation to, whether it's an internal group, a customer group, again, do your homework, know the audience, make sure that you've prepared information that they can digest. If there's reading that needs to happen, make sure they have the material in advance of the meeting so they can read it, and make yourself available to, hey, if you have any questions before our board meeting, give me a call. I mean, that happens a lot. Hey, I want to talk to you about this topic. I might want to talk to the chief people officer. I might want to talk to our chief financial officer. Walk me through this so that I'm sure I'm understanding before you get there. We don't have time to waste in the meeting, and so an executive or a person from the management team that's presenting to the board, that's a chance to shine. Be succinct, be purposeful, be action oriented. And in my personal journey, I identified probably 20 years ago that ultimately in my career I would like to serve on boards. And I belonged to an organization in my community that was one of our initiatives, Women on Boards. And we invited people in to help us understand what that takes to be prepared. And certainly networking is, you have to network to let people know what you want to do. So there's no one path, but there's certainly preparation, and give yourself visibility, and consider every chance to speak to people as an opportunity for you to gain confidence and to shine.
So now for our students, and many of them are online right now, as well as future generations, what advice would you give it to them?
And don't take for granted an opportunity to interact with not just your peers, but your people outside of your comfort zone. Be willing to get outside of your comfort zone. And I would definitely say, don't be afraid to ask for feedback. What I found in my personal journey was that a lot of times the feedback I got was after the fact, and it was like, oh, you did a nice job on that. well, that's what could I have done better? Give people permission to give you feedback. If you ask someone in advance, hey, I'm going to be making a presentation at this class or at this event. Could I practice with you? And could you tell me 2 things I could do better and 2 things I did well? And I found that that's a really great way to get meaningful feedback because people want to help you. And but sometimes they're uncomfortable if they want to give you criticism, but they aren't comfortable to tell you what it really is. So you could give them permission to give you good advice.
Wow, this is a wonderful and wonderful, advice, also practical. So Valerie, as a tradition of our program, I hope to build an intellectual bridge between the current and the future generations. Einstein said, any intellectual fool can make things bigger and more complex. It takes a touch of genius and a lot of courage to move in the opposite direction. How would you paint a picture of why supply chain should join the boardroom by giving it a new perspective?
Gosh, I honestly, Helen, wish that supply chain could have gotten to the boardroom through a path of success versus a path of crisis. And I think in part that is because as supply chain professionals, we did not do a good enough job of elevating visibility of what it takes to make things work together. And our society as a whole became so used to having everything whenever they want it, from what television show you watch to when my package arrives to is my latte ready when I drive up to the window because I've ordered in advance. It's just, we are spoiled. We are used to this on-demand lifestyle, and we didn't do a good job of letting executives and boards and publications and the news that now talks about this all the time understand what it takes for this to happen. And hindsight, yeah, it's good that it has the visibility now. It's just disappointing in the way that we got there.
Yeah, but isn't that, can I flip it to say we've been doing a too good of a job? So problem doesn't, yeah. So people take it for granted. Maybe the supply chain profession also being underappreciated and valued in the past. I mean, now crisis after crisis, right? And I feel like that might be, inevitable that the supply chain has to step up more. But how? Like, why would you give a reason that why should they enter into a boardroom?
Well, and I'll give you, I mentioned the chip shortage. I'll give you another specific example, 2 examples. One, just a colleague, a friend of mine bought a new car, a Chevy Tahoe, bought the new car, ordered it in January, finally just got it. But when he got it, they said, well, we're sorry, we're still missing 3 chips. So you don't have all, I mean, obviously it's safe to drive and everything, but you don't have all the functionality yet. But when we get these chips, we'll install them. So, gosh, that's disappointing, right? It's disappointing on so many levels. Why wasn't there? He didn't know that was going to happen, so he was surprised. So that's just an individual example. The company that I mentioned, they are a manufacturer of equipment that is used to make chips. They have a supplier that they purchase something from, I don't know what, but whatever they purchase, it requires chips. So their supplier cannot get the chips in order to provide them what they need for the equipment that makes the chips. So you've got this circular problem that touches everyone. And I think it goes back to Helen, knowing now these questions that I mentioned to you and others, I'm sure, they need to be at the forefront, not the tail end. And you're absolutely right that I think supply chain professionals made it look too easy. When I was in the logistics outsourcing business, one of the things that I would say to potential clients is, what you really want to know from me is, what do I do when something goes wrong? How do we react when a problem occurs? Because problems will occur. It's not perfect. And I think, people just need to understand that.
Yeah.
But we have ways to work around it.
Right. So to answer that question, why should the chief supply chain officer take a seat at the boardroom table? I have an analogy to share with you. Because supply chain transparency is the best way to build trust between suppliers, companies, and customers. Similarly, an open concept restaurant gives diners a direct view into their kitchen. Everyone can watch their food being prepped every step of the way. This type of visibility will put your diner at ease. As a result, the restaurant projects an image of being honest and upfront about its practices. Chefs are motivated to cook better food, and the restaurant builds trustworthy relationship with its customers. So it's almost, I think, the motion of bringing the supply chain officer to the boardroom is open your kitchen and give people that trust.
Like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I like
Do you have one to share with us?
I do. And mine would be, think of your chief supply chain officer the way you do of your meteorologist. So supply chain risk management and extreme weather risks have similar attributes. They can be short-term events that have long-term impact. They can be known events or unknown events. And to prepare in advance to acknowledge that these risks exist requires pretty much the same process: to assess the situation, create a plan, prepare based on that plan, act when events occur, and unfortunately sometimes recover and restore. We rely on our meteorologist to tell us. I mean, the other day my husband said, "Is it going to rain this afternoon?" And I looked at my phone and I said, "Yes, it's going to rain in 29 minutes. And it did rain in 29 minutes. So I could trust my meteorologist because they have great technology now. They can much more closely predict the weather. I think the common thread here is early warning signs. And both the meteorologist and the chief supply chain officer need to have those early warning signs, and we need to be able to trust them. We can't eliminate all the risks, so we have to have those steps in place going forward.
Wow, I love that, because I think that resonates so much with this trust and verify, that mindset that you mentioned earlier. And I also connect the dots with the earlier impact with the balance sheet, right? Because I think the entire supply chain is responsible to make most of the balance sheet happening, right? Whether it's giving enough supply on time, or manage at the reasonable cost, as well as the risk that we are trying to manage and avoid. So the early warning sign, I love your analogy, Valerie. That's brilliant. We actually have a question from our audience. So let me read that question. How long does it take before the result of the board's decision is really visible in the company, especially in such dynamic and unprepared cases as in the past years of supply chain?
Indecision is the enemy of the board, right? If the board is prepared, and we know, I'll give an example, we know in advance what items are just for our review and approval, and what items require decisions. And so we know when we go to the board meeting, we're going to be making decisions on these things. And we need to then empower the CEO to carry out such things. That might be, we've established thresholds of investment dollars, or whatever it might be. But indecision is the enemy. Action, and thoughtful action with all the prerequisites that we've discussed is required.
Yeah. Well, our audience love your comments about indecision is the enemy of the board. Very insightful. Thank you. We actually have another question is, you know, if we have an immigrant who has a lot of manufacturing and supply chain experience in their own country, now how are they able to obtain a board seat in the US? What are your thoughts about that?
I think that the timing is great for that because board diversity is very important. And if they are qualified in terms of the specific job spec, the boards put out job specs for the specific seats they're looking to fill. Many boards are facing the fact that they haven't done a good job of diversity, whether that's geographical diversity, gender diversity, background diversity. So that should be a strength, not a weakness.
That's great to know. So Valerie, thank you so much for the almost entire hour conversation. What is the final thought or one thing you'd like our audience to remember?
I would say to, since we wanted to really focus this on board of directors, I will tell you one thing that I came to realize is when you're working in the business and you're every day fighting that good fight for customer satisfaction and revenue and profitable revenue and satisfied employees and all those other things that go on, then you see these huge overhead charges. I know I experienced this in my company. Why do I have to pay all these overheads when I'm generating all the revenue here? The requirements for public corporations today that they have to satisfy are so intense. I really had no appreciation before joining the board, the degree of reporting, of responsibilities, and it really takes a high performing board and a high performing executive team to satisfy all the requirements. So it's a fascinating topic, and there's lots of material. I would urge anyone who's interested in that to read about it, talk to people who are on boards, and set a goal for yourself if that's what you want to do in the future.
Awesome. I want our audience to remember that it is time to move supply chain from the back room to the boardroom for both classic reasons such as cost management and operational efficiency, but more importantly, for strategic reasons such as transparency, resilience, and sustainability that protect the long-term shareholders' value. So Valerie, thank you so much for sharing your vision for supply chain leadership and also your insight from the corporate boardroom. I have learned invaluable new perspective from our conversation. I hope you also enjoyed the chat.
I absolutely did. Thank you so much.
And to everyone, thank you for attending our live webinar and listening to our podcast throughout the entire season. Because of you, we can finish our season 2 on a strong note. Last but not least, I would like to thank you, my small team who made the program possible. Melanie, thank you for always keeping us on record and on schedule. Irene, thanks for the high quality editing and the powerful marketing audio clips for each episode. I wish everyone a restful summer, including lots of family time, ice cream, swimming, laughter, good books, and fabulous memories. Looking forward to seeing you in a few months. Thank you very much.